with us this evening. So without further ado, we will get started. Okay, so this is sort of the agenda of everything that we are going to be covering tonight. So taking a look at this should help you sort of know where, if you have questions, where they might end up falling, and sort of help you know if it's something that I'm hopefully going to get to, or so on and so forth. So we'll start with talking about our rule changes for this year. We'll talk about online best practices. We'll talk about the platform that we're going to be judging on. We'll answer questions, and then I'll tell you how to contact us. Um, but before I go into that, just because I know there's been some confusion because we're offering so many different judging platforms this year, I want to take a moment to show you our website. So if you are not familiar with our website, it's www.themifa.org. Okay. And, using it as a resource is going to be a good idea, especially during this COVID year, and especially for those of you who are planning on judging. Because if you go to this website and you utilize this IE resources page here, and if at any point you think you can't see what I'm showing on my screen, like I've had a tech glitch, please just speak up and let me know. But I'm putting this link in the chat. This is a really great page to keep handy as we venture into online judging this year, because not only does it have the ballots for every single event that we offer, but it has a bunch of tutorials for how to use the online platform, which I'm going to go over this evening. And then if you scroll down, we have a bunch of videos that I'm going to reference tonight, which you will find helpful, I am sure, at some point in time. There's a recording of this webinar that we ran about a month earlier in case you want to go back and reference that one, as this one will also be posted on here. But then if for some reason you're newer to judging, this webinar really just covers judging this year, hoping that you're coming in with judging experience. If you also need a rundown on our events and how to judge in general, these two videos are at least a starting point. Hopefully the coach that you represent is going to get you some materials, or you can always go through our certification process. And if you have questions about that, I can cover that at the end. But know that if you have questions about our categories, or typically just how judging logistics work or our scoring, watching these two videos, the one on the left goes through the different events and categories, and the one on the right goes over a lot of judge need to knows, are very helpful. They're each about 15 minutes long. So make use of those, but know that that's not what my focus is for us this evening. Okay, so that's one good place to start. But getting into the meat of our agenda, so obviously we are online this year. All of our events this year through MIFA have been in a virtual format. We've had no in-person events. And we made that decision early on so that we could help coaches and students, be prepared, and offer the most equity across the state, considering the fact that we have, schools all over that have different plans for virtual learning, in-person learning. But all of our events for forensics, also known as individual events, through our state tournament in May, end of April, May, will be online. So given that, we've had to make a lot of, we've had to do a lot of work to help try to recreate what we're used to as the in-person competition into an online format. And our IE committee, which is made up of coaches from around the state who are voted in to geographically represent their region, and the coaches from the region in which they serve, worked tirelessly to try to recreate a situation in which very little rule changes actually had to be made. But nonetheless, we still do have a few events that needed to be adapted in order to work for online competition. So those are showing on this screen here, and I'm going to take a few minutes to go over those. Zaz might chime in at any point in time to help clarify some of these. The first of which is broadcasting. So broadcasting has changed this year to match what we currently offer at the middle level. So instead of prepping for a half an hour on the day of the tournament from a packet of stories, students are preparing their broadcast in advance and bringing it to the tournament. So the majority of what they are presenting has been prepared in advance. So one difference, if you're used to judging broadcasting, is that in the past, students have competed from the same set of stories. They've taken a large packet of stories, and there's still been some variety in what gets presented to you because students may pick and choose different stories from that packet, but at least their source material was all the same. That's not the case this year. Students have the freedom and the right, and are, part of the process is finding their own stories and cultivating their own broadcast. So students are preparing that ahead of time. What they get on the day of is one story, which they are to insert into their broadcast and also use for their editorial content. So they're getting that story, most likely cutting it down to fit into their broadcast and preparing. They have 15 minutes to do this and prepare their editorial commentary on that. Story. Sorry. So that's where the limited prep aspect comes into play for this. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the link to the broadcasting ballot, which is also available on that page that of the website I showed you. But just in case you feel like opening that and reading a little bit more about this category change. The next event to cover, or two events to cover, are duo and multiple. Those are seeing the most significant changes and rule updates for this year, given the virtual platform. Okay, so obviously we, if you just think about it for a second, you can see how duo and multiple may have presented challenges because we have students that are competing from home. We have students that are competing from inside their school building. So, schools are handling how they're tackling their competition season differently. So in duo and multiple, performers have two options. They can either be in the same physical location, or they can join and perform from different locations. So what that looks like is, we're still on a video conferencing platform like we are now, but I might be on, one video box, and my duo partner might be joining from their house. And so we would be joining on two different devices and have two different boxes. If we were together, we would both be in this room performing from the same device. So given that apples to oranges type situation, the rules that are set in place to help with some consistency and to help maintain safety is that if they're in the same location, they must be 6 feet apart, they must be masked, and they must confine their movement to a 36-inch circle. So think of a large hula hoop, and that hula hoop is fixed and it does not move. So two students in duo or multiple students in multiple choose where they're placing their 36-inch circle, and their movement is confined within that circle for the duration of their piece. That circle doesn't get up and move. And so, that circle has to, in theory, be spaced from the next performer's circle so that we're always maintaining 6 feet social distance. Okay. And then, so, literally the best way to think about that is a box. If you're looking down at the performer's space, and they've placed circles onto the ground where they're allowed to perform. If they're also choosing to be in the same location, there's no singing, whistling, or beatboxing. And that is because studies have shown, and there's pretty accurate data that shows that that's one of the main ways that the virus can be spread. So that's what it looks like if performers are in the same location. If they're in different locations, they don't have to adhere to those 6 feet rules because they're not with somebody else. They don't have to be masked because they're alone, but they must confine their movement to the same 36-inch circle. So that is to help them and to help you as the judges have some sort of consistency, because once you start judging this year, you will see that seeing duos and multiples that are in the same location versus ones that are indifferent, locations are very different. One is not necessarily better than the other. We've seen both do well so far this year. They're just very different, and they give a very different vibe to you as the judge and to the audience. So in an effort to try to create some consistency off the board, maintaining movement just within that 36-inch circle helps draw some consistency between the two different options that performers have. And then the only other change for multiple is that the cast size has been reduced to 3 to 5 performers from the standard allowance of 3 to 8. Okay, so those are the big rule updates and changes. And if you need to hear that again, and other than looking up these rules as they're written in the document I'm about to show you, also on the website, which I pointed out to you before, there is a handy video, this one at the top left, called 2020-21 rule changes. And it's, about a 4-minute video that goes through all of the 3 events that I just went through and the changes that each one reflect. So if you need a refresher, that's a great place to go on the website. Okay, so next, I'm going to pull up this document, which is our best practices and frequently asked questions for this competition year. And hopefully you can all see this Google Doc as it's up here. If you can't for some reason, let me know, because that means my screen sharing isn't working. And don't mind the baby noises in the background. I have a very little baby here on my lap right now, joining us, thinking about judging. I also want to drop the link to this document in the chat. And if you are on a device where you are able, I would really encourage you to open this document and bookmark it, because this is something that's going to be great for you as a judge to view over and over again throughout the course of the year. Okay, so and I'm going to go through and highlight some of the main things about this document that are great for you, but I want this to be something that I encourage you to read on your own as well, because it's a ever-changing document. As we learn new things, or as we learn new tech capabilities or find new glitches, we're able to update this to help students, coaches, and judges. So this document starts with general and all events, and basically is just a bullet point of what kind of questions have been brought to us so far. So to highlight a few things, in order to compete and or judge at this competition, you're going to need reliable internet, you're going to need Chrome, and you're going to need some sort of device that has a camera and a microphone. Okay. Laptop, tablet, I'm going to be honest, for judging, a computer, laptop, or desktop is really going to be the way to go, because you're going to be asked to type as well. And unless you're very savvy with typing on your tablet, or you have an external keyboard, I would find that needing that keyboard capability is going to enable you to be able to leave the best critiques. For judging, we've had judges use multiple devices, but really you can do it all on one device. If you happen to have dual monitors and that's something that you're able to do, great. But know that for judging, what the situation is going to be is you're going to be on a video conferencing platform similar to Zoom like this. And you're also going to have a separate browser window open with your ballot where you're writing critiques. So there's going to have to be some screen manipulation and resizing in order to get both of those things up. Some judges are choosing to be in the room in the video conferencing platform from one device, and then have their ballot pulled up on a separate device so that they can be typing onto that. Maybe they're watching on their desktop monitor and they're typing on a laptop. Not everybody has multiple devices, so we've had judges successfully judged, with the bare minimum, but that is what you need. You can judge from anywhere. I'm going to skip through. Again, this is something I encourage you to read on your own as well. But one thing that I want to cover is number 7. What are the expectations for competitors in the round when they're not competing? Because this is important for you as a judge, because you will be, the leader in the room, the adult in the room. So the IE committee felt that it was very important to maintain the same, levels of expectation and experience as much as possible as in person. So that means that we're asking, to the extent that whenever possible, all competitors keep their cameras on during other performances to create that audience like feel that the students would be getting in person, right? That they can be looking at the screen and still seeing a reaction from their fellow competitors and from you, the judge, and feel like they have an audience to perform to. Everybody should be muted, but we are asking judges to also keep their cameras on, but also be muted, or else we'll hear you typing. And, we have yet to really have any behavior problems and don't anticipate them, but just like we ask, students to not enter classrooms at a school without a judge present, your authority in that video conferencing room is important, and so your presence there with camera on and focus is very much appreciated. Now, the only categories that take exception to that rule are duo and multiple, during which it's completely fine for the judge to ask other competitors to turn off their cameras and just have the performers have their cameras on. And the reason is if you think about multiple, where there might be, 5 cast members per multiple, all on separate devices, it's going to be very hard for you to keep track of which 5 are performing at any given time. The conferencing platform, which I have yet to show you that we use for this, does not allow you to move the window boxes around like Zoom does. So having students turn their camera off that are not performing is going to help you be able to focus on the performances that you need, or the performers you need to be focused on. Same with duo. Obviously, your own internet, and there may be some bandwidth issues, and every once in a while somebody needs to turn their camera off because of a distraction. We're asking everybody to use their best judgment to try to create an experience that doesn't distract a performer. So as a coach myself, I've told my kids this expectation, but obviously I've said, if you think something happens during the round where somebody walks into the room from your family and you anticipate that could be a visual distraction to the performer, go ahead and hit your camera off for those few seconds. Right? So we're teaching students to be as respectful and cognizant of their surroundings as possible. Which brings us to tech difficulties. So we're hoping that it's not the case, but students have been experiencing some tech difficulties, and judges, throughout the course of the season every once in a while. So anticipating this, the IE committee set up a process that we can follow if need be. So I'm going to tell you this process, but then I'm going to also tell you a couple other things that we've actually been doing in practice that go a little bit farther to help support the student than this process. But this process is important because there are going to be situations that might arise in which we can't we're not able to go out of the way to get the student to perform. And so if that's the case, here is the worst case scenario. If a competitor has technical difficulties, their audio stops working, their video stops working, they get kicked out of the meeting, something happens that's making it so that they can't perform well, we have a 15-minute rule. So they have 15 minutes to reconnect or disconnect from the time of the disruption to begin their speech again. Now, what that means for the purpose of the round is that they might drop out of the meeting. You might wait a couple of minutes to see if they rejoin, but then you may decide that it's best to move on to the next performer in order to keep the tournament running. Just make a note of the time of that former performer's tech disruption so that if they rejoin during the middle of the next performance, you can slip them in to perform again after that next performer. Obviously, if that extends past the 15 minutes, that's okay because they joined before that 15 minutes was up. Okay, so keeping the round moving is always important too. If for some reason the performer is unable to complete the performance or is not able to come back or something happens, the judge may award a score of 490. So that's our tech difficulty score. The IE committee felt that it was, not fair to have to penalize any student any lower than that, because a lot of these situations are so out of a teenager's control. We've had schools run into IT issues where their server and their network is prohibiting them from competing. It's very rarely, if ever, the student's fault. So a 490 is the score that you may award for tech issues. Now that is to your discretion to a certain extent, given that if the performer has met the minimum suggested time frame, many of our events are 5 to 8 minutes, so maybe they got to 5 minutes before the tech disruption, but they can't complete the performance as intended. If you felt that you saw enough to warrant scoring them normally within the round, that's up to you as you feel appropriate. So you have that right as well. Now, just to let you know that what we've been able to do thus far at the invitationals is avoid this rule by allowing students to compete in Zoom in a breakout room that the tournament administrator is holding. So you'll be given direction at judge meetings in the morning should you judge at any tournaments. And hopefully whoever the host of the tournament is will say, hey, we're trying to make it so that students can compete whenever possible. And so if you do have a student that has a tech issue, contact the tab room. They'll give you a way to contact the tab room. And most likely what they're going to ask you to do is report to a Zoom meeting at the end of that round and judge that student individually in a breakout room, and then consider them into your round scoring. And the reason is because we're finding that some students are having better luck with Zoom, possibly, than the video conferencing platform when they have that issue. Again, this is few and very far between. I mean, it's been less than a handful at each of the invitationals I've attended personally thus far. Time cards, the only categories that we're requiring that you be prepared to provide time for are limited prep. The other ones, students may ask, but we understand that that's a lot for the judge to have to administer. And so that's at your discretion as to whether or not you're able to do it. Obviously, we try to err on the side of giving students what they need to the best that we can. So I would encourage you to try, but students know that the only categories that they're being guaranteed time signals are broadcasting, extemp, and impromptu. Now, on this same note, I want to take us back to this IE resources page. There's a video here, hand signals for online competition. And this is a short, like 2-minute and 30-second video that it would be great if you watched at some point in time. And I will drop the link into the chat because it goes over the standardized hand signals that the IE committee came up with this year that we're asking everybody to use. And a lot of them have to do with time and then also possible tech issues. Know that students have watched these too, so that they're expecting if they see a certain time signal from you, they know that that means that you can't hear them or you can't, see them, although that would be less likely, right, for them to see your hand signal, but standardized time signals as well. So we're using these to, again, try to make it easiest to understand and equitable. So taking the time to read that or watch that is very helpful. We're advising students that they should use a personal timer whenever possible, but obviously you still are expected to be timing performances just as you would be in the in-person tournament. So using, phones are usually best for that. There is a timer built into the software, but I find phone timers to be more user-friendly. This timer times down and stops at 0. So that isn't incredibly helpful for performances that may go a little bit over the suggested time frame. So next on here is some wording about how students have been advised based on a best practice to set up their cameras. These are not rules about how they have to stand, but they're a best practice. Well, some of these things that are written here on rules that I went over with duo and multiple, but we've given them some best practices as to where to stand. What you need to know are, rules and expectations are that, the camera should remain stationary, that the performer should be visible in the frame at all times. We've given them an optimal camera distance, but where we say optimal is obviously a best practice because we're dealing with students who have different realities, different home spaces, things like that. But to the extent that they are able, they've been, asked to show head to knees in order to give a consistent, inter performance that shows that much. And a straight angle at head height is preferred. So if you read through that, you'll get an idea, and we reiterate the rules for multiple and duo. Taking us down to public address and visual aid categories first and foremost. Students are still allowed to use visual aids, but we are not, we're not able to screen share. So on Zoom, like right now, how I'm screen sharing with you, that is not a capability that the platform that we're using has. So students have been advised of that. So they have to use our normal visual rules, which, we've always referred to as the only one easel rule, but really means one fixture, and they can create visuals as are allowable by that rule. That doesn't mean that they can't use digital or projected visuals. They can. The statement says competitors may only use one surface for display. An appropriate stand may be used to hold the projection surface or device. So what that looks like is, sometimes projecting on a wall or an external monitor that's next to the student, or an iPad or something like that. But again, there's no screen sharing. So you'll see creativity with the visuals to account for this, but that is the situation now. And they're given the same sort of camera suggestions, so on and so forth, as in the interp world. Yep. And then that takes us down to our limited prep categories, which these ones, I will actually be coming back to a little bit later in the presentation to explain to you the process of how they work. But just to show you here on this document, they've also been given some guidelines as to how performers should stand and angles that are best for the judge to be able to watch them. Okay, so this document is a good thing to keep handy. All right, getting us back into our presentation here. So I've been referring to this online video platform, conferencing platform multiple times. So now to introduce you to it, we are using two programs that are integrated into one website, tabroom.com and NSDA Campus. Tabroom.com is the name of the website that handles the tabulation and the making of the schematic and the ballots and where you input the scores. And NSDA Campus is the name of the video conferencing platform, okay? But they can both be accessed through tabroom.com. So instead of driving to, Portage Central or to Avondale for or Portage Northern or Avondale for a tournament this weekend, you are going to be going to tabroom.com. That's how you will be accessing the tournament. That's how you will be attending the tournament. You will be attending a judge meeting on Zoom like this through a Zoom link, but the rest of the tournament will all be accessed through tabroom.com, which is something that you will need to have an account on, which I will cover in a second. So, okay. So tabroom.com is something that we're using for all IE events this year. We've used it for debate for a very long time, and we've been using it for middle level individual events for the past few years. Okay, so all coaches, students, and judges will need an account on tabroom.com in order to participate. So if you have not made one already, that is something that you will need to do, and I'll show you that if we have time a little bit more detailed at the end. And you will need your account to be linked to whatever school it is that you represent, okay? And on the website, as I showed you earlier, we have a list of tutorial videos about how to create a judge account. So if you click on this, it takes you to a short YouTube video that shows you exactly how to create an account on this website, which I am actually going to pull up just in case we need to take a look at it. But when you are on this website, you would sign up for an account and go through that process. By signing up for a judge account on Tabroom, that allows us to register you as a judge and allows us to give you access to the rounds that you will need to be at and adjudicate from. You cannot judge at any of these tournaments without a Tabroom account. And most of you will have to create Tabroom accounts that then the coach that you represent will link your account to their school. Okay. So that's what Tabroom is. What NSDA Campus is the video conferencing platform that tabroom.com is using for tournament running. Okay. It's very similar to Zoom. It's actually housed on an app called Jitsi Meet. Okay. And I'm going to come back to that at the end to help set you up for success technologically. But built into tabroom.com is this Jitsi Meet app under the umbrella name NSDA Campus. And it allows us to facilitate speech and debate events with video, audio, and chat. Okay, so very similar to Zoom. But the difference is that it only gives access to the judge and the competitors and the tournament personnel. So, Zoom has that to a certain extent because we have waiting rooms and things like that. But when you're running a very large tournament where you're using approximately 70 competition rooms, this platform enables you to not have to send individual Zoom links to 70 judges 3 times a day for each round. It's all built into this platform and gives you access only to the rooms that you're supposed to be in. It's impossible for you to show up to the wrong competition room or for students to stumble into the wrong video conferencing room because they only have access to the ones tied to their Tabroom account. So as a judge, when you get assigned a round at a tournament, you're going to have a screen, which I'll show you in a little bit, that looks sort of like this. It's going to tell you what category you're judging. This is for a humorous interpretation round. We don't offer humorous, but at the national level they do. And then it tells you who the competitors are. At this particular tournament, the competitors were noted by numerical codes. Our codes, tend to be a school alpha code followed by a numeric code like A1, B5. You also will receive the students' names on Tabroom as well to help you take attendance and make sure everybody is present. But when you get this screen, this little video icon is essentially a Zoom link. Okay, although it's not Zoom, but I'm trying to use common language from what you might be familiar with. So just like you clicked on a link to join this meeting today, when it's time for your round to start, you click on this video icon and it opens a separate window with the video meeting, okay, with the round. It opens what feels very much like this Zoom meeting where there are all the boxes of the performers and you go into the virtual competition room. Back on the anchor page from which you clicked it on, you also have the ability to click this ballot button, and then that browser window will change to the ballot and you'll be able to see where you enter the comments and the scores. So you do not have to open 2 tabs yourself, but having one tab open and then clicking on the video conferencing icon will open the room for you separately. Okay, so once you're in the competition room, it looks like this, except for there's as many boxes as there are students or competitors and judges in the room. It's similar to Zoom. You have the ability to mute and unmute your microphone, to turn your camera on and off. There's a little, when it shows, yep, in the bottom left there, there's a raise hand and there's a little chat box so that, chat can be open in the round as well. Chat has been useful because it's helped work through some tech issues. Chat has also been great because that's one way that judges are collecting topics or piece titles and authors if they need to, is by students putting them into the chat so that then they can put them into the ballot, because unlike at an in-person tournament where we pass out the critiques and have the students fill it out themselves, that's not really an option. But this is what the inside of a competition room looks like. Like I mentioned earlier, there is a timer. But again, you can set it to start, to have a maximum in as many minutes as you need to, depending on the category, but then it does count down and does not go into the negative. There's also a contact box should you have an issue that you can, reach somebody, but most tournaments are going to give you a phone number, which is probably going to be a faster way, or a Zoom meeting that you can access, for a judge troubleshooting room. So that is what the inside of the competition platform looks like. Now, back to tabroom.com. Once you create an account and you log in, this gets you access to a bunch of stuff. Now, the login that I just used to click in is a login that I use as both a judge and a coach. So my page is going to look a little bit different than yours. But once you're logged in, you'll see you're logged in because your email will be up at the top here. Anytime you get lost on this website, just click back on your email. So if I were to click around and get confused by trying to click on all of these tabs and I didn't know where I was, I would just click back on my email, which is going to anchor me to my personal homepage. And on the right-hand side here, you can see judging. This is my judging dashboard. So this you will definitely have once you make your account. And if I clicked upcoming, if I had rounds assigned, they would be listed right here, like that picture I showed you moments ago that had the video icon and the ballot. If I'd been assigned rounds, they will show up here on this screen, okay? So that's how one way for you to always check to see what you're supposed to be judging at any point in time. When you create your Tabroom account, you're also asked to put in a phone number and an email. And that's because the rounds that you're judging also get blasted to you or pushed to you through your email or as a text message. And that can be good for you for many reasons. You can always go back to your Tabroom account to see it on there, and that's how you're going to access the round. But if you get added to a round, it's going to remind you of that through a text blast, instead of us coming to find you physically at a tournament. And it's just a good double check for you to have, and a good way for you to know what you should be looking for. Okay, so that's why it asks you for that information. It also sends you any messages that the tournament administrator may send out throughout the day to those contact emails and numbers that you put in. So if the tournament needs to tell all of the judges that we need you to report back to this Zoom meeting because we have to, deal with something, you would get the notification that way. Or if it says, semis is running 15 minutes behind, look for postings at this time at this place. It's going to send you, pertinent information that you need for the tournament at those areas whenever possible. We've also created other ways to show you that information as well. Okay, which brings us to limited prep, which I am going to go over. So this is if you are judging, if you are judging impromptu, extemp, or broadcasting at any tournament that you may attend. And I just want to take a few brief minutes to explain how this process works, which involves me pulling up a different presentation. So you will be reminded of a lot of the information that I'm covering right now at various tournaments in the morning general meeting. So, while that may end up becoming mundane for you at the first couple tournaments that you judge at, I think that the repetitiveness will be helpful to help you get your questions answered. but to cover right now, these 3 events. So impromptu is running a little bit differently. If you have judged this event before, you understand that the students all show up to you in the competition room. Then you draw for order, and then everybody goes outside into the hallway except for the first speaker. Right? Then you give the first speaker their prompt. Then they prep right there, they speak, and then they go and they get the next performer. Now, the way that that is running virtually is that the students are all going to report to your video conferencing room, just like they would the classroom. Okay. And then they're all going to leave except for the first speaker and go to a utility room that is on tabroom.com that's been, noted as the hallway, for instance. That's what they're referring to it as. The students, they learn how to navigate there in the morning. You don't have to really worry about that utility room as much. You stay in the competition room. You release everybody except for the first performer. And then that first performer receives the prompt from you as a link to a Google form. Okay. And if you're unfamiliar with Google Forms, and that is scary, I promise you it's easy after you do it for the first time. Tournament personnel will email you 15 minutes before the round a link to a Google form that looks like this, what's on the screen here. And you will put that link into the chat of the competition room. And the student will click on that link and fill out this form. And that's how they will be given the prompt. Once they hit submit, they see the prompt on their screen. You will also fill this out so that you can see the prompt. You will fill out this Google form, you will hit submit, and then you will see the prompt so that you know what the students are speaking on in that round. The easier part about this is that once you put the link to this form in the chat, it stays there. So when the second speaker comes in, and the way the second speaker knows that it's their turn is after the first speaker speaks, they leave, go back to that utility room, and they help facilitate the second performer getting back into your competition room. You stay in the competition room. And then the second speaker comes back with the first speaker. Both can see the link that's in the chat because, unlike Zoom, the chat is available to all participants regardless of when they enter the room. And then they click on that same link and then they access the prompt the same way. The difference is that you're used to starting your prep time sort of right when you see the student open that prompt. The difference is that you have to have more of a dialogue with the student, and they have to say, okay, I've submitted the form, I've seen the prompt. You have to take their word for it and start their prep time at that point. Okay, so that's how impromptu works. And again, you will have so many chances to be reminded of that should you be lucky enough to judge impromptu. Next is extemp. And extemp, you do not facilitate the prep time at all. Okay. But that is being prepped somewhere else in a different Zoom meeting. And so they have been prepping before they show up to you. Okay. And then when they arrive to you at their appointed time, they speak right there in the round. You get emailed the question bank 15 minutes before the round starts approximately. So you have an idea of what the different questions are that they're speaking on. You're going to ask them which number question they're speaking on, or ask them to, put it in the chat so that you know which from the list they're about to speak on. Now, if you were judging this in person, you would be used to stopping by the media center or something like that in order to pick up the speaking order and the speaking time. But you do not have to do that at online tournaments. At all online tournaments, possibly, or at a lot of them anyway, there is going to be some sort of master schedule document that you have access to the week leading up to the tournament and then on the day itself. Okay, so this is good for you to have because it reminds you of the schedule. It also has these 2 tabs down at the bottom, broadcast prep and extemp prep. When you click on that, you have public access to see the section that you're judging, the order of performers, and what time they're speaking at. So instead of stopping by the media center, you just have public access to this schedule at all times and can check and know that you should be expecting G32 at 9 o'clock in your competition room. Okay, so this is what we're doing instead of that. And we're doing the same thing for broadcasting. They're prepping ahead of time before they come to you in a separate Zoom meeting. And the prep facilitator is recording their order, what time they started prepping, and what time they're speaking, so that you know when you can be expecting competitors. On that same line with this schedule, this will be important for you the morning of any tournament you judge. The tournament director will give it to you at the judge meeting. They'll give you this link if you don't have it already. And like I said, it helps you know the meeting and the Zoom links that you need to know for any meetings, the schedule. And then it also has this area over here on the right-hand side where live updates are being put in about notes and changes for the tournament and important need to know information. Like I said, some of this might come to you if they send it out as a tab room blast to your email or phone number, but this is also a really good place to check for any tournament updates. And at most tournaments, there's going to be a Zoom open all day that sort of is like the ballot table or the place that you can go and get questions answered or any assistance that you may need. Okay. So that takes us through limited prep and sort of brings us to our last few minutes here where I can answer any questions. Before I open the floor for questions, I just want to take a moment to talk about tech a little bit because that has been updated since I last ran this webinar. So like I told you before, the video conferencing platform that we're using is called Jitsi Meet, okay? What has happened with some tech issues, just to make you aware of, is that some people are having trouble, and it's a small minority, but I want to prepare you for anything. Some people are having trouble accessing this app. Okay, think back to the very first time that you had to use Zoom. You had to download Zoom, right? Or you had to download the app, or you had to choose to open it from a browser. Okay, same with if you used Google Meet for the first time or Microsoft Teams. So Jitsi Meet is going to be similar. The very first time that you try to access a competition room, you're going to have to allow access to your microphone and allow access to your camera. We're seeing it pretty seamless for most people, but some people, especially those who have a lot of security or blocks in place on their computer might not love that you were just on Zoom for a morning meeting and are now switching to a different video conferencing platform. So the very first thing that we're going to tell you to do is shut it down and turn it back on, right? Log off, close out your browser, possibly restart your computer, give your computer a new try at joining that platform instead of Zoom, okay? The other thing that we have found is that if you look at the top of my Chrome browser window here and where you would type in a website, if you see this little lock right here, if you click on that, that's going to give you the access to the site settings or tell you that you need to allow your microphone or your camera to be accessed by Jitsi Meet. If you are unable to use Chrome for some reason, if it's not a browser that you can use, one that you're not willing to use, then it's not going to work on an Internet Explorer or a Safari or a Firefox. What you're going to have to do is download the Jitsi Meet app, okay? And I know many of us have probably downloaded the Zoom app and are using that instead of accessing Zoom by the browser, but the opposite is sort of true for what we would like you to do for Jitsi Meet. It's going to be a lot easier if you just use Chrome and access it through tabroom.com. But if you have to and are unable to use Chrome or one of the possible the possible scenarios is that you're going to have to download the Jitsi Meet app to use it. You can test, although it's not foolproof. Once you make your account as a judge, you have access to these NSDA campus test rooms that are right here on the middle right-hand side of my computer. Test competition room, test practice utility room. If I click on that, it's going to take me into a practice room where I'm in here for 120 seconds. Obviously, it's not going to let me use my camera and microphone because I'm currently using those for Zoom, but it gives you an idea of what it looks like. Okay, so that's one way to test it. The reality is you're going to find out the first time you judge, and we're going to be there in the morning to help you through any tech issues. That's one of the reasons that we've built a schedule that asks you to arrive almost an hour earlier, is because we want to give you time to be comfortable with that platform. Okay, I said one more thing like 3 minutes ago. So now I do have time for any more questions. Thank you for the compliment in the chat. We're trying as best as we can. Our IE committee has just done such a fantastic job at setting things up. I am not on the IE committee, but I'm happy to parrot all of the work that they have done and spread it out to you guys. But questions about any of this or anything else at this time? And if not, you can type them, you can speak them, but that's the main information that I have for you. To contact us, there's a million ways. All of these emails are on the website. I was going to give you and am going to give you access to this presentation as well. That's there in the chat if you want to click on that, because then you can just click on these names to email them. All the members of our IE committee are on the right, and then the MIFA staff on the left. Email us with any questions that you have, and somebody will get back to you. But thank you so much for taking the time this evening, and we really appreciate all the work the judges are putting in. This has taken a village, and I think it's really important that we're trying to give these students some sort of normalcy, or, an activity that they love. Restricted access, good to know. Let me fix that. And so I appreciate your willingness to be one of those people that's helping the students be able to compete. Now, if you refresh, you should all have access to look at it. Thank you, and have a great night.